Keep the noise low, but I see you will not be noisy. Okay then. And that day, Ethan moved in. It took all of 20 minutes. Chapter 4, En Passant. Simulating the behavior of 100 billion neurons of the human brain is not feasible by a classical computer. Quantum machine learning promises are needed to fulfill that requirement. Amit Ray, Quantum Computing Algorithms for Artificial Intelligence. Somebody had played the Judas. There was no other explanation for it. The notification on the computer screen caused her to take immediate action. The young woman, hardly a shadow in the dark space of the building's late-night infrastructure, moved with efficiency and speed. She was a phantom, and not the tremulous, wailing variety. Time was of the essence. But her direction, well, movements were hardly expressed, despite the expediency and urgency she felt within. First, the phone and tablet she had been using to deliver the software payload were bundled in a sack and thrown out the nearest window. The window was then closed, and she speed-walked to the area's exit, shutting the office door with swiftness contrasted by her almost feline silence. No sound came as she slowly let go the latch. They would follow the signal of her devices, and she would have to escape to the nearest safe house. Thankfully, at the moment, the whole building was empty. They'd have to find her to catch her. Security would be on the way in short order, though. Her activities had been linked to the admin. They would have scrambled 10 seconds ago, but they were coming from below. She was leaving from above. Global Commerce Tech, or GCT, had a development campus near Boulder, Colorado. It was only 3 stories in height in its largest buildings. For the most part, it was only 2 stories in height, but it was large and spread out. Buildings had security infrastructure to quarantine them from one another. The roof wasn't quite the same, and an enclosed bridge between offices crossed a small maintenance avenue to an interior parking lot. She scrambled up a stairway intended for maintenance access, through a door that had been carefully propped open, and across the bridge. She could see flashlights through the windows across the park. They were running through the cafeteria near the west end of the building, maybe 500 feet away. That was the nearest entrance to the building she'd been in, which happened to be one of the most remote from on-site security hubs. In fact, it was one where few clients were even renting out floors. If not for the fact an old intranet connection existed in a nigh-abandoned office, there would have been no reason for anyone to seek entry there. Security wasn't even patrolling the premises. They would be now, though, and they'd launch a full investigation the second they found that old computer tower she'd hacked. Still, it would take time. She had a few minutes. The little woman hustled over the building's roof, finally making it to the south end where a line was attached securely. She clipped onto it, pulled on a pair of gloves, and without hesitation rappelled down. They would find the rope, that was fine. They already knew someone had been there. This was the secondary exit. If things had gone to plan, she'd have finished installing the software and left without being noticed, retrieving the rope at a future time, or perhaps not at all. It had been coiled tightly and didn't look out of place. She'd spent more than a month on this job, so she had quite a few preparations like the rope. But they were all in the past now that she'd been burned. Her feet found the ground without incident, her descent occluded behind a nearby pine. Beneath that pine was a moped. The athletic young woman was quickly on it and riding over finely trimmed grass to a point at an intersection of chain link fence enclosing the campus. There she prepared an escape from the campus as a whole, for it was surrounded in several layers of security. As yet, there was no pursuit. Out the other side of the fence, she stopped the moped and retrieved the rock she had used to wedge open the rusted-out chain-link panel, 3 feet or so, that was her entry. It closed louder than she intended, but that didn't matter at this point. Now, in the dark, she sped down a grassy hill on a deer path just wide enough she could maintain it. Until she had made the sidewalk over the hill, she kept the lights off. It was 2 in the morning. Traffic was low. A street light illuminated where the deer path intersected a footpath. The road was empty, and a crosswalk linked another deer trail through a subdivision onto a real trail that stretched on ahead. She sped across the road as she began to hear sirens wailing in the distance. Doubtless there would be surveillance on the traffic lights, and certainly cameras would be all throughout the varying suburban neighborhoods on her route between Boulder and Longmont, Colorado. Her escape took her circuitously through country roads and subdivisions until it gave on an access road that snaked its way into the Rockies. A prefab off-grid safe house waited that direction. En route, she stopped at a gas station dumpster to lose a blonde wig, an ID badge for GCT's Boulder campus, and a number of other items that were vestiges of her previous identity. She chose a small gas station that happened to have a portable toilet in lieu of interior facilities and was closed. She changed her clothes and went to the moped. It was slight, cheap, electric, and easy enough to wheel into a creek nearby. Where the creek went under the road was a magnetic box camouflaged as infrastructure. The woman climbed up, crawled her way to the slanting cement block under the bridge where she was able to access and detach the box. She entered a combination into the tumble lock, opened the box, removed a car key for an older vehicle, and an identity packet that came complete with a new identity, including a number of monetary resources. There was a debit card and $20,000 in cash. With a sigh, the little woman stashed these about her person and walked several blocks until she found an old Pontiac out of the 90s parked in the lot of an apartment complex. The car key unlocked it, and she drove the rest of the way through the foothills of the Rockies to the nearest designated safe house. At the safe house, or rather the pint-sized shack hidden in the woods with limited amenities, she found a featureless twin bed with a letter atop the covers that simply said, "Redirect." She opened it, and centered on a piece of otherwise empty printer paper were these words: "Trail Livestone, South Dakota, 18 hours, en passant." "So the boss is the Judas," she muttered. In another moment, she flashed a lighter out of her pocket, lit the piece of paper on fire, and found a glass she filled with water from a sink in the corner of the room. She dropped the flaming pieces in. Once they had dissolved into the water, she drank, said, "Till tomorrow," and smashed the glass on the ground. She stood a moment with the nasty taste of the ashes and tap water in her mouth, contemplating the issue. At length she added, "If there is a tomorrow." They'd flushed her all right. It was indeed deliberate. Why would they do that? She'd been in the identity a full month already. Either she'd made a serious mistake, or something more important had initiated a change in plans. A drop of blood fell to the floor. Bird-like, the woman looked first to the ceiling, expecting the worst, then realized the blood was coming from her. Sometime during the climb down the building, she must have scratched herself, or maybe when she'd taken the moped out from behind the tree, she'd done it. Branch definitely could have been at fault as she hightailed it out of there. The woman made her way to a closet-sized bathroom and its mirror. The cut wasn't bad. There were several, in fact. Small scratches along her right temple. A branch had probably been the culprit, and she hadn't noticed it until now because of the adrenaline. Checking the dark garment she was dressed in, she did indeed find a few concealed droplets around her collar and dried blood along her neck. With practiced calm, she applied ointment, retrieved from behind the mirror, and looked at herself. Without the wig, her hair was a natural brown, green eyes, a pixie face. She was short, but proportionate, in her early 20s, and not the type someone would expect to be involved with anything like her present activities. She was perfect. So why were they hitting the eject button? She frowned at herself in the mirror. It was all in the en passant. En passant was a chess move. It meant in passing. A pawn had the ability to move diagonally and take an enemy down, an enemy pawn, if that pawn made a move opening itself up appropriately. In the context of a redirect communication, it was code for the location of assignment details. She'd have to access the information digitally from a different secure facility on the way to Trail Livestone, wherever that was. This was the import of the code word en passant. In all likelihood, she wouldn't know what was happening or why until she reached this place in South Dakota. After another moment staring at her reflection in the mirror, she turned off the light, closed the tiny bathroom's door, then raided the fridge for rations. She collected a number of tools and took a moment to examine what name was on the between identity they had given her. "I'm Chloe now, eh? Great, I'm doofus. She snorted, put the passport away, locked the door, and with that, Chloe was off into the night.